We are riding on a railroad, singing someone else's song, forever standing by that crossroad. Take your side and step along.
It's funny because growing up with trains and tracks and the railway all around, you sort of became used to it as a child. It was another world attached to mine. It became an environmental concern for me probably towards high school, when I became more aware of my surroundings and what was happening all around.
Take your side and step along.
A home is where you're comfortable in, where your parents are, and you like to sleep there. A place that you live in and you can play and have fun. When the air is polluted, it's bad for the environment.
Another generation is growing up in the suburbs of Montreal. Here in Cote Saint-Luc, the children learn of the environment and its problems. Like many of their parents, they too have accommodated themselves to the very low level of risk that their environment poses to them personally. Freight trains carrying a variety of cargoes, at least 6% of which are dangerous, toxic commodities, pass within meters of their classrooms almost every half hour. For these youngsters, there appears to be only the risk of not hearing their teachers, such as life in the buffer zone. Since the Mississauga derailment disaster exactly 10 years ago last week, the Canadian rail transportation industry has followed strict federal government regulations concerning the handling and transport of hazardous materials.
As a consumer society, we tend to demand more and more of the esoteric chemicals in our daily lives. We don't see them on our tables, but we use them in our barbecues. The materials are used to purify our water, in our cleansers, soaps, paints. All of these things that make life so much easier for us are also part of the problem. We as a Class 1 railway in Canada are obligated to carry these when they are offered for passage, to be able to move these goods safely to destination. That's our whole purpose.
Is there no risk at all?
I don't think there's any question that Canadian railways have a good reputation, have earned it. But rail accidents are going to happen regardless of how much precaution you put in. And Canadian railways have invested a lot of time, resources into emergency response.
Between safe handling and emergency preparedness, it must seem, therefore, that the environment risk is minimal for the citizens of Cote Saint-Luc.
Train tracks doesn't bother me, and I just don't think like that. I try to think positive.
If anything has to happen, it'll happen.
Such as life in the buffer zone. Cote Saint-Luc citizens have many choices, and after working hard for many years, and after having escaped from death camps in many cases, they chose the good life. They earned the good life for themselves, their children, and their grandchildren. Are you ever concerned about the environment? I mean, you've got the power wires up here, you've got spraying the grass in your backyard, and you've got the train just down the road. Does that ever bother you?
No, never.
Why not?
Because I like the lawn, the big lawn, and I like the trees. The whole area here, I like it.
But awareness is growing that the wolf may still be outside the gate, that there may be a price to pay for modern urban life.
Well, I care about the waste that we throw out and the recycling.
Well, I worry about the future, but, you know, I don't know what I can do.
I feel sorry for them unless we older people wake up and start to look after the environment and all kinds of things.
I think that we should be able to live in Cote Saint-Luc without having chemicals and all this sprayed on us.
I don't think that using chemicals on the lawn is an acceptable risk.
We don't know what an acceptable risk is. Sometimes you don't know until something's happened. Sometimes things don't happen for a long time. We don't know what an acceptable risk is.
We're talking about our milieu, the price we're paying. I think that there's a large price to pay. Why do we all? We have large homes here, and we're very privileged to do so. Most of them are heated by oil-fired furnaces. which are belching large quantities of carbon dioxide into the air, acid. If you look at the economy, there are hidden economic costs of all of this, because the cleanup will have to be done one day.
There's a man up here, he claims to have his hands upon the reins. There are chains upon his hands, and he's riding upon a train. Oh Lord, we've been riding.
I think we'd like to have the CP yards away from here. But we have to accept the reality that we are living in an urban milieu. So overall, I think the CP yards are a relatively small price to pay for our urban milieu. And I think rather than paying that small price, perhaps we have to look at what else we're doing and lower the costs so that others won't pay the price that we're paying now.
But the fact is that I'm not necessarily going to change the way I live if I don't perceive any reason to do so.
And such is life in the new buffer zone.
Forever standing by that crossroad. Take your side and step along.